our afternoon session here at CSCON 0. We're really excited to have the first talk of the day by another dear friend to ChainSafe, the CEO of AIB, Peng Zhang. And he'll be talking about 1 million blockchains. So let me add you to the stage, Peng. And just for all of those watching on YouTube, please, share this as much as you can. We'd love to get as many people to be able to get this content as much as possible. Peng, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you.
Hey, Aiden. Thanks for the introduction. Happy to be here.
Awesome.
My first time using this software.
So I'm going to turn off my camera and mic, and I'll just hop on if you need anything in a bit. Thank you.
Okay. I'll share my screen. Let me know if this is working for you guys. All good? All right, cool. So I'll get started. Thanks, Aiden, for introducing me. And thanks for running this event. I'm looking forward to future CSCONs as well. So today I'll be giving a quick talk about 1 million blockchains. I'm Peng Zhang, CEO at Tendermint. So let's get started. So a little bit about me. I've been passionate about open source for quite some time. In 2012, after Edward Snowden's revelations about NSA spying in the US with the PRISM surveillance program, I built this website called prismbreak.org. Gained quite a bit of traction. It was really popular on Reddit. It's still being linked on the R-Privacy subreddit. And it got roughly about 2 million views over the course of a couple months as people are scrambling to find open source and free alternatives to proprietary software that may or may not be spying on them. I joined Tendermint a few years later as the first employee. And I've always really resonated with Tendermint's mission, to bring decentralized finance and open finance to the world. Because I believe that software is really meant to be open source. And the really cool projects that I've been excited to be a part of are the ones that are open source and that end up being, run by different maintainers. For example, Prism Break itself, I no longer even run it, but it's being maintained by a community of people that I've given access to on the repo. And I'm hopeful that crypto will also continue growing in the same way. I have a background in UI design and front-end development. I was a freelance web developer for quite a long time before joining Tendermint. And when I joined Tendermint, I focused primarily on building UI. And clearly back in 2015 and even 16, the core infrastructure was not there yet. But I built the first wallet, which has later become Looney. And I also designed the Cosmos fundraiser app, which allowed people to donate Bitcoin and Ethereum. We raised 17.3 million over the course of half an hour. And that fundraiser has really been what's funded all of Cosmos development up until this point. I was recently appointed CEO this year in May. And my focus for the company and what I think is needed in Cosmos in general is just an improved developer experience. So if you don't know too much about Cosmos, I'll go and do a quick refresher on that. So Cosmos is it's a blockchain development ecosystem. And one of the core tools that I want to focus on in this talk is one called the Cosmos SDK, which you can use to build sovereign blockchains. So why would you want to build sovereign blockchains? First, I'll just put out there that smart contract development is still much easier than launching a brand new chain. So in this talk, I hope to answer why software developers should spend time building a Cosmos blockchain as opposed to just writing a Solidity smart contract, for example. So one of the core concepts of Cosmos is sovereignty, which means that the software that we provide you is entirely free and open source. It's licensed as Apache 2. I'm not here to convince you to buy any tokens at all, because you don't need any tokens to use the Cosmos SDK. by using this software that has no strings attached, you control your own destiny by owning your entire applications platform, right? From the bare metal all the way up to through the entire stack. It's all yours to do whatever you want with. And we're hoping that people can use this to build entirely sovereign communities that govern themselves without outside influence or without relying on infrastructure that has a different set of shareholders than your own. So interoperability is the second key concept of Cosmos. And so while you're able to build your own sovereign chain and govern with your community exactly what happens on it, right? You can also connect your chain and connect your tokens to other chains in the ecosystem with the IBC protocol. And then lastly, I think most importantly for me is Cosmos SDK was always designed to be modular. So you pick and choose whichever modules that you want to use, and only the ones you want to use. You can throw away the rest, keeping your stack as lean and mean as possible. And unlike smart contract development, you can always alter fundamental chain parameters, like block time, staking rewards, number of validators, block sizes, etc. So with all these great benefits, what's going to take Cosmos to 1 million chains? 1 million's a very ambitious number, right? Billy gave a talk yesterday about how we only have about 60 Cosmos SDK-based mainnets today. So how do we get from 60 to 1 million? 1 million is like roughly one blockchain for every 8,000 people in the world, right? So what makes a blockchain usable for small groups of people like that? What's stopping Cosmos from taking over the world? And I'll go over that real quick. So as a part of Tendermint and as a part of helping to build the first Cosmos-based blockchain, the Cosmos Hub, what we realized is that it's very expensive to build blockchain core infrastructure, to build the blockchain itself, and also to build a community. You really need 3 great teams. You need a blockchain engineering team, you need a design and front-end development team, and you also need a marketing and community team. It's very much more involved in smart contract development, right? Because for smart contracting, you just need someone who knows smart contract language. But in sovereign proof-of-stake blockchains, you also need to convince a community of stakeholders, of validators, right? To get your blockchain going, to make sure it's secure against double spend attacks, etc. And generally, we found that in order to make a very successful, valuable blockchain like the Cosmos Hub, we've needed to put in millions of dollars into these 3 types of teams. And that's really unsustainable. And that's why we're never going to really grow and get to mainstream with the cost of development and maintenance and community building being so high. So how do we cross the chasm to mainstream from these early adopters who have really expended their time and energy, their valuable time and energy on Earth, working with the Cosmos SDK, which still requires so much work to get going. So at Tendermint, we've identified 3 areas that we want to focus on going into next year for the sake of the Cosmos community that we think will help grow the ecosystem and bring about the vision that a lot of us in crypto, most of us in crypto care about, which is to move as much of finance as possible onto blockchain. So the 3 areas that we want to focus on is to make building chains faster, to make validating chains cheaper, and also to make launching chains a lot easier. So how do we do that? First, I want to focus on the problem number 1, which is why building a chain takes so much time. And I'm going to go into it from a perspective of like a mainstream app developer or web developer. So if I wipe my mind clean of everything I've done over the past 5 years, and I see this page, right? It's like a page of terminology that you really need to know before you can participate meaningfully in discussions about proof-of-stake blockchains. And it's a lot to learn, right? Well, I can confidently build a web app without knowing any of this stuff. To build a Cosmos app, which is really just a decentralized web app, you need to do a lot of studying, right? Likely months of studying. And this is what I've learned as I've been hiring people for our team, which is that they need months to get onboarded if they're not coming from a blockchain background already. And that is expensive. Developers are expensive to pay for. So how do we smooth this learning curve, right? So people end up using Cosmos for their weekend projects because clearly, it's not really usable for a weekend project right now. So we've started working on this year already, with a tool called Starport CLI. So this is a developer-friendly layer on top of the Cosmos SDK. We launched it in July. It's gotten a lot of positive feedback. In fact, people have interacted with it over 25,000 times, which I think is incredible. It comes with a bunch of great features for developer productivity, which includes scaffolding the entire blockchain for you, scaffolding a front end, right, a web UI, hot reloading of both backend and front end code. It supports cross-chain token transfers, which was really incredible to see. And it also has easy pathways to bringing on board CosmWasm style, Rust smart contracts, as well as Ethereum Solidity contracts. It's available today on GitHub, V12, and we're working on V13 right now, which will provide better support for IBC. So I've really appreciated using this tool myself, because the Cosmos SDK, like I said before, is not easy to get into, right? You follow the initial tutorials that we had in the day, and it took hours, if not days, to get yourself going with a local testnet. But with Starport CLI, we've reduced that to less than 5 minutes. In fact, we have an online dev environment where you can get a chain launched and going within like 1 minute of loading the web page, which I think is really amazing. So on to the second problem. Validation of proof-of-stake blockchains is still very difficult. Maybe if you're an SRE engineer, or if you're familiar with DevOps, it's not that difficult for you. But for everyone else, for application developers and people who are not familiar with administering a Linux system and using things like like Docker and Kubernetes, it's not easy to spin up a validator, and especially it's not easy to keep it going and maintaining it for future upgrades and such. Beyond the fact that it's not easy, it's really expensive, right? To be a validator, you need to invest in tokens, right? Because every proof-of-stake blockchain cannot launch unless 2/3 of all the tokens that exist are online and staked on validators. Of course, you don't need to buy large percentages of a network, but you need to either get enough tokens to participate, or also to convince people to delegate to you, which is also expensive in terms of marketing. You need to pay upfront for hardware and rental co-location centers. You also need to hire site reliability engineers for your team, which is also very expensive. I don't even want to get into how much it costs in terms of taxes to run a validator. Everything eats away at your margins, and it's pretty cutthroat to become a mainnet validator right now. Which means for developers, I'm coming at it from the angle of developers, it's very hard to get validators to care about your chain. So we're working on something hopefully to release early next year called Starport Cloud. So Starport Cloud is validation as a service. It will provide continuous integration, continuous deployment for blockchain. It'll provide tools for simulating your chain, also for benchmarking it. We hope to have a service integrated with GitHub. So with every single pull request you make to a blockchain, it'll automatically run the blockchain with several nodes across the world, and make sure that nothing is breaking as you're making changes to your chain. We hope to provide multi-node testnets that developers can centrally manage, as well as later on mainnet validation. So like turnkey Sentry node and validator validation for your chain immediately. And it's also integrated with Starport CLI, our earlier tool, so you can do everything from the command line. So you can both develop your chain and launch it to the cloud without ever leaving the CLI. We plan to have an alpha release in Q2. So for developers, for mainstream developers and web developers like myself, who would prefer not to do back-end work, right? To launch several validators, or even to launch a single validator with several sentries across the world, it took hours of work, right? Lots of typing away, and you're not even sure if it's secure or if it's going to work really well. So after Starport Cloud, you should be able to launch a sentry, multiple sentries, and a validator within minutes. So the final problem that I want to touch up on is decentralized launches are really difficult. So I'm going through the experience right now as we upgrade to the next version of the Cosmos Hub. We're working on testnets right now. Occlusion from the Cosmos ecosystem, as well as basically most of the mainnet validators, are busy working on testing the Stargate upgrade to the Cosmos SDK. And it's been really difficult getting people to synchronize on upgrades. So, decentralized launches are a burden, especially if you want to get tens of people or more than 100 people online at the same time launching a chain. It's always going to be a difficult problem, no matter how we improve it. And this is another barrier to entry for developers, right? Validator teams, reliable validator teams, are small and overworked, right? And they have to pay attention to the release cycle of many different chains. And developers need this validator support to launch valuable chains. It's also very difficult, as we've been learning in Cosmos, to engage validators into testnets because they have such limited time, and because testnets, don't really have economical value for validators at the end of the day. They really just care about mainnets. Finally, decentralized launches are done very imperfectly through a bunch of channels that are not meant for, decentralized validation and launching chains at one set time, right? We're using things like Discord, Telegram, Slack, Twitter, et cetera. None of them are really meant for decentralized launches, right? So how can we make it easier for developers to connect to validators? This is a third thing that we're working on. We're calling it Starport Network. So Starport Network is a blockchain. It's a two-sided marketplace for developers and validators. It's designed to speed up the process of decentralized chain launches and chain restarts. So what is it, right? For developers, it lets them announce new chains to a community of validators and puts them on a fast track to mainnet launch by being able to offer token incentives to validators. And for validators, it lets them get an overview of all the best upcoming IBC-enabled blockchains and allows them to very quickly, make judgment calls on which chains to validate for. We hope it'll be, a community and a place for validators to connect with chain developers and chain launch coordinators, and a unified UI, right, to make this process of decentralized launches faster and easier. What is the end goal for Starport Network? The end goal for Starport Network might not even require a UI at all, and in fact, it can be entirely API-based, and every single chain developer, right, can set parameters on what they want in terms of validators, and validators can set exactly what they're looking for in terms of chains. And I can imagine a future where chain launches and restarts happen automatically without any human input other than the initial proposal to launch a chain. So this is what we need to get more chains going. And we're working on this internally right now. We're able to start a production blockchain with 4 commands from a validator and 4 commands from a chain coordinator. So the business model for this, of course, it is like a chain, like I mentioned before, and the token will benefit from the upside of launching other chains. And we'll have a testnet in Q1. So I want to share with you Among Us. So this is the most popular game in the world right now. And this is a multiplayer lobby before Among Us starts the game. And so that, like I mentioned before, I come from a UI design background. And this UI actually, or something similar to it, could easily work for a decentralized chain launch, right? You got your parameters in the top left, you got little avatars of validators, jumping around and changing their name and settings in the middle, and you have a giant start button to launch a chain. What prevents decentralized blockchain starts to be as easy as this? That's my question, and that's what we're hoping to solve with Starport Network. So if you're familiar with the Cosmos ecosystem, and I guess any incentivized proof of network system today, testnets to incentivize validator participation, right, are definitely needed to get validators who care about your project to join. And it's not easy to get these started because it takes a lot of coordination, a lot of manual reach out, and work finding validators to participate. And there's a bunch of scheduling issues that make it take time to launch an incentivized testnet. We hope with Starport Network, it should take less than a day for someone to announce an incentivized testnet and launch it, the very next day with a set of validators who are interested in building this chain. So those are the 3 things that that we have for the Cosmos community going into 2021. Thank you for listening. And also I want to thank all the core Cosmos developers for building, the infrastructure to a level where we can start thinking about developer experience and making that better for everyone who's joining from now into the future. So as a company, we're focused on building developer tools which lower the barrier to entry to blockchain development, right? And we hope that will get us to 1 million chains. If you're interested in working with us to build these great, DevX tools, we're hiring. You can also reach out to me on Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Peng. What an incredible talk. And I know just from, judging at some of the different hack atoms, especially the last one, I've just seen how many developers really got to use Starport and how much it changed what they worked on in such a positive way. So I have seen personally the impact that tool has had for developers, and cannot wait to see how much more impact the rest of the ecosystem of tooling that will come out around it will have as well. So yeah, incredible work, and thank you so much for sharing that with us today. We have a few questions from the crowd. So what is the UX challenge you believe is the biggest barrier for most developers and people in general?
So the biggest UI challenge I think right now is still related to Starport CLI and still related to the Cosmos SDK. So I come from JavaScript and front-end development, right? And as many issues as NPM has, I think a tool like the Node Package Manager, right, would be very great to have in the Cosmos ecosystem, right? A centralized place where people can see, really sort of the most popular modules everyone's using for their chain, and for them to use it in their chain with, NPM install or, Cosmos module install. I think that has the potential to bring about the most amount of new developments and ease of use.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't wait for that day. Next, we got what user experience or developer experience improvement are you most proud of? So I guess Tendermint related, you related, or Cosmos related, however you want to take that question, or all three.
Yeah, so I can only be proud of what we've already built so far, which is Starport CLI. While I think for people in the Cosmos ecosystem already, it's not really that useful to them, because they already know how to use the SDK. We think that there's a chance this tool could, 100x the number of developers in the ecosystem. So we're really happy to continue working on this tool and making sure that, it really serves new developers and gives them, the best face of Cosmos that we can.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. For sure. And one of the questions that got a lot of upvotes, people are really interested with what camera or webcam you're using because of the quality being so incredible. So can you share with the crowd what webcam you're using, please? Yeah,
so I don't know how to share it without turning off the camera and showing you, but it's a Sony a7 III. It's actually a mirrorless camera.
Oh, for sure.
And I bought it to travel with, actually, for 2020. But then COVID hit us, and I'm now using it as a webcam.
Amazing. The best webcam out there, for sure.
I strongly recommend, if you have the funding or the money to get a camera for your webcam, but definitely do some research and see which one best suits your purposes. Because, we're all remote. We all have to be remote these days. And, video chat is the only way we can really communicate and connect on a human level.
100%. And I guess just another question I had for you is, with everything going on with Stargate, what do you see as a few of the applications that were always a part of the vision that brought Cosmos forward that are now going to be able to be realized through the introduction of IBC?
Mm-hmm. So I think the project that I'm most excited about, given the activity that we're seeing in Ethereum, is sovereign new chains that focus on DeFi protocols, and potentially just yield farming as well. Like the Cosmos ecosystem and Cosmos infrastructure is designed to allow for these sort of experiments to happen, off of the main chain. So it lets people who develop these chains, reap most of the upside, and also without, clogging up the transaction throughput or blocks of a chain that's more focused on security or governance, like the Cosmos Hub. So that's what I'm most excited about, DeFi and Cosmos.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. We really appreciate that conversation, and hopefully those listening, not just within this platform, but in general, will be able to take advantage of Starport moving forward and really help take their project to the next level. So thanks again for joining us, Peng, and I'm looking forward to catching up soon.
Thank you, Aiden, and thank you to ChainSafe for running this event.
It's our pleasure. Talk to you soon, Peng.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Awesome. So next up, we have Drew Stone, who is the tech lead at Edgeware. And so Drew is going to be talking about reputation systems. So I'm going to be adding you to the stage now, Drew. Awesome. So whenever you can, perfect. Great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me, and thanks for hosting the event.
Of course. And again, for all of those who are watching on YouTube, seeing the messages on Twitter, please share this with the world, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to listen to this talk. So, cool. Drew, please take it away.
For sure. Can you see the presentation?
Perfectly.
Nice. So yeah, I guess, the title of the talk is Edgeware and Beyond, but messaged as Reputation Systems. But hi, I'm Drew. I'm the co-founder of Edgeware and Commonwealth Labs. Commonwealth, we built and deployed Edgeware. But yeah, so for people that don't know, Edgeware is a community-owned, upgradable smart contract blockchain built on Substrate. We have a growing developer ecosystem. So if you're interested to write some smart contracts, we support Inc. smart contracts written in Rust that compile to WebAssembly. And some of the interesting projects that people in our community are building, in addition to us, are DeFi protocols, zero-knowledge primitives, and social applications. So those last two I'm pretty interested in, as I think we don't see enough of that around in this ecosystem. What else makes Edgeware interesting? We have OnChain Governance, and we have an OnChain Treasury. Using this treasury, we've hired around 2 people so far for community and technical roles. We have a over $4 million treasury in Edgeware tokens and a validator community of around 110 validators. And so how did we get here? Edgeware in the last month or so has been integrating the chain bridge module that bridges substrates to Ethereum and other substrate blockchains. And so we're actually integrating this to build out an Edgeware and Ethereum bridge. The planned initial launch is to have like a small relayer set, ideally less than 10 relayers. We're definitely interested to find other validator type people who want to help relay using the chain bridge system. This work would definitely be funded in Edgeware. All the maintenance and the costs associated, just definitely reach out to me if you're interested. From the previous talk, I found interesting, the goal is to make it easy to have validators for developers, and it's something I've thought of a lot on Edgeware. We want to make it easy for not only validators, but other types of infrastructure. We want to enable that to be funded so that developers sort of can build applications that leverage this infrastructure. So the goal is to target continuous treasury funding in the future. And so if this is of interest to you, definitely reach out. We'd love to chat. And so what kind of goes into incentivizing relaying? Like how do we incentivize relaying as well as other infrastructure goods? So far, we've done on-demand treasury grants, but some of the other interesting ideas that we've thought of internally are to organize a group of like-minded validator and infrastructural individuals into a working group, and ideally get those DAOs funded. Other ideas we've had are to stream payments directly from the treasury. And finally, I think one of the last ways of incentivizing this type of infrastructure is to charge fees for the infrastructure usage itself. Just some ideas. And so how have we kind of thought of structuring these working groups? Because I think it's something that we have found good footing on at Edgeware. So far we have 2 working groups, a brand working group and a Edgeware builders working group that focuses both on brand and development respectively. And so I thought of, it'd be interesting if we could create a new infrastructure group. It's composed of people in the infrastructure community who could have ways of monetizing their skills for validating, oracleizing, and relaying, and using sort of the treasury system to leverage funding of all of this work. So yeah, it would be very interesting in the coming future if we set this group up, especially as the chain bridge module goes out into production. I'll certainly be looking out for people who want to join. And so how do we grow working groups? Because I think that's sort of core to decentralizing a lot of these blockchains. You don't want all the work to be concentrated in a single team, and you don't want all the opinions to be concentrated with sort of a single group leading the discussion. These are open systems, and they should be treated as such. So currently, we monetize working groups through treasury grants. And one goal would be to add more incentives to these groups. So each of these groups could form synergies in working together in deploying new projects. The Starport developer tool, it seems pretty fascinating for sort of monetizing some work that goes in, that sort of touches on groups that deal with brand, groups that deal with infrastructure and development. So there's certainly interesting synergies I think can be made as we and other chains sort of grow their respective forms of these groups. And then in the future, the idea is that we have sustainably funded infrastructure, development, and branding. But cool, that's kind of the Edgeware wrap up. And then now the rest of the talk is kind of exploratory, sort of what's missing in the space and some ideas that I've had in the past month or so. So what's next? I think there's been a fair amount of governance tinkering this year, especially as it goes into DeFi, and a lot of people critiquing those sorts of governance mechanisms. But what we haven't seen, I think, is any sense of reputation that can be quantified or sort of posted on these ledgers, nor have we seen like greater composability of not financial technology. So like what are our governance goals in this space? Really high level, minimize unnecessary governance and maximize useful governance, and especially community growth. I think community growth factors heavily into governing a system well here in this space. So one thing, at least on Substrate, is governance as a proxy for upgradability and sort of, a newer model of forking. So using Substrate, which Edgeware is built on, we can upgrade our chain in a lively manner. The treasury serves to incentivize chain-based activities, and and we have all these tools through governance of sort of building out communities and building out an ecosystem. In addition, governance is a proxy for community growth, so we can create new tokens for communities. I feel a lot of this has been done on Ethereum, and while people have said these tokens have no value, they go up in price tremendously. So how do we do that here? We sort of monetize work that communities and working groups are doing through community-based tokens, social tokens even. And we can drive value through these activities through the upgrades that sort of bring this functionality to life. Cool. And so when I say governance minimization, what do I talk about? I think there was a sense that we should get rid of all unnecessary governance, but that sort of doesn't chart the path of, or the journey of sort of getting to that point. So to me, the way I see getting to that point is continuously breaking down your organizations into, topic-specific working groups who end up receiving a lot of ownership over their area of the community and the work that they do. And slowly you chip at sort of the top level governance of a system. And you continuously break into these working groups or DAOs that are project or application specific. And as you do this, you can provide, especially using a treasury, provide continuous funding to each of these independent organizations and maybe iterate on this model until, you continuously break down and you have sort of a rich ecosystem of developers, marketers and infrastructure people. But ultimately, I think in order to get there, you sort of have to maximize the amount of governance you're doing because so many of, discussions that go into upgrading a blockchain or discussions that go into starting a new initiative all deal with humans. And we have to incentivize each other to sort of do this work. So at the top level, we need, potentially we need a council of people who are putting in the work every day. And ideally, those people are sort of held accountable for work the community expects them to do. And they're responsible with decentralizing the system over time. So some things, that I found interesting, they certainly touch on reputation, are sort of bringing more human input into this realm of governance. So in order to do things like polling, ratings and recommendations, and identify better trust values of people in your community, whether they be developers, validators, your governors, whatnot. So something I find interesting on Edgeware, at least, we have, a council of people who manage the treasury, or at least have some oversight over our treasury. And we don't really have, a clear way of slashing these people if they, behave improperly. But we do have a rich literature on slashing validators and slashing people for actions that, you can prove with fraud proofs that someone did. But what happens if your governor is sort of, you don't trust him, but he or she has all the power by tokens to sort of continuously maintain power in your government. Yeah. And so I think the missing component is really better reputation algorithms. But I know a lot of people would say, like, we would just need to have reputation on chain or in some protocol or another. But I would say, like, these reputation algorithms are themselves and should be governable. So what can a perfect reputation do? A perfect reputation, where perfect is defined as, achieving some optimal governable objective, it could choose our council members. It could choose working group leaders, people to lead these verticals. It could choose them autonomously and others by vote. I think something that's interesting about the Starport thing is if you had a reputation system over validators, maybe you could, grandfather validators into new networks autonomously by reputation. So I think it extends nicely to the entire ecosystem if we had, a standard system like this. And I said that I think these reputations should be governable, especially the algorithms, in order to allow us to recalibrate these systems when we've figured out that we sort of reached an unoptimal state. but yeah, I mean, touching on a similar note, I think reputation is interoperable and should become even more interoperable. So the first iteration of interoperability was linking blockchains together using their consensus messages. And next is sort of integrating their state. So transferring state across ecosystems. This should be made possible with XCMP and IBC. And then it should require a tremendous amount of new infrastructure, such as new oracles and new governance mechanisms. But I don't see there being a huge need of having so many different reputation systems in an interoperable environment. I think when blockchains can talk amongst themselves, there could be a place where everyone's reputation is maintained and sort of governed. So what is a reputation? Reputations are, sometimes binary, sometimes scalar, sometimes multi-valued, high, low, good, bad, or some distribution over 0 or 1. But ultimately, I think reputation should be governable because it's a set of rules, at least the algorithm is a set of rules of how to allocate reputation to people in a community. And so why would you govern this? I think there's a strong case in game theory that says like people would behave strategically in any system with incentives, especially reputation, since the goal is to maximize your reputation. But ultimately, if the reputation system fails to be governed, then that system won't outlive itself. It won't live for much longer. So I think in the beginning you'd want to govern these things, and they would be governed altruistically, because otherwise they won't live that long. And so having the ability to govern them, I say upgrading to newer reputation algorithms and recalibrating existing reputations allows, I think, this system to sort of have longevity. And so ultimately, like, to build reputations, you need to be able to score actions and score things that are occurring in your system, whether it's actions that you can prove are good or bad, or actions that you need to poll people that are good or bad. And I'm obsessed with governance to the extent that I think these algorithms, whether they're reputation or scoring algorithms, are also sort of up for grabs to be upgraded and governed. Since they're all just one set of rules, people should be able to update those rules. So what does a system like I'm thinking of look like? I think at one end you have applications and protocols, and they all hook into a reputation and scoring chain with ZKPs, which are zero knowledge proofs. I'll touch on that at the end just a tiny bit. And I think at the bottom you have a new range of computation oracles. So these oracles are sort of agnostic to whatever sort of work they're getting. Their job is to do compute and prove it, and the applications can sort of leverage this infrastructure. Obviously, you have incentives for these oracles, and you might also have incentives for applications to join using any sort of incentivization scheme. When you have treasuries, you can obviously spend your treasury generously to incentivize like this type of work and this type of engagement. So at the top for protocols, you have a protocol specific governance system for scoring and reputation algorithms. So if protocol A is something, or application A is something like Starport, you might overlay a specific reputation system on top of these validators, and maybe choose the top 100 validators in this system to go into the next published blockchain. I'm not exactly sure how Starport works, but it sort of piques my my curiosity. And so what happens to the participants of this protocol A? They would govern this reputation system, and all these changes to the system would be relayed down to the oracles. So if the algorithm changed, that we needed to do compute over, the oracles themselves would get a message that the system has changed for this application and process it accordingly. And then next, I find there's this new set of oracles that I haven't seen many people building, which are compute oracles. They upgrade with the protocol. They ingest new reputation and scoring algorithms through software upgrades. They might be incentivized to update their software to get a new set of algorithms by the protocol, or by even new applications that need these sorts of algorithms processed. Yeah, lots of incentives, I think, in a system like this. And so I think, one reason we haven't seen this type of system be built yet is ultimately because the space as a whole doesn't have, a rich developer ecosystem for zero knowledge tools. A lot of the compute is pretty high capacity. For reputation systems, it might involve some machine learning. So ultimately, I think in order to get to this point where we can compose reputation systems, we need to sort of bring much larger efforts to designing and developing zero knowledge primitives. So one thing I've been looking into recently is called proof carrying data, which allows you to iteratively do computation and prove the end result is correct with respect to all the intermediate steps. And it even generalizes to sort of directed acyclic graph computations in a really nice way. And it's quite interesting. I think it'll be pretty core piece, an area of research for like most high compute trust jobs that occur in the blockchain space. So like right now in the Oracle space, we've had, people serving data from the Web 2. And so I think it's not, too far in the future that we'll see really a change in this from a lot more computation on data, whether it be data from the Web 2 or the Web 3 space. And yeah, so like how should and how do these systems compose? So right now we've, best example we've seen of composable protocols is DeFi. Everything is financial by design, and everything can sort of be layered on top of each other. You can create an algorithmic stablecoin and then lend it out, and also take leverage on top of all of these systems. And it's, pretty fun. It turns everything into a casino. And prior to that, we sort of had blockchain composability, which is just composing the protocols together and adding state. And so I think, it's kind of a silly comment, but I think anything financial seems composable. So make everything kind of financial, whether or not it seems like it. And so what isn't composing now? I think identity systems, we have not seen a strong composable use case for. At least everyone is kind of building yet another identity system. So I've crossed it out because I don't find it too interesting. But I think reputation systems, we haven't really been building too many of them. I haven't seen too many in the space, and those would be composable because those are likely financial. And then ultimately we don't have, composable zero knowledge systems. So we might have a few smart contract protocols that allows me to, vote or mix coins, but there's nothing that lets me compose an application on top of this. So I see like at least the last two as being things that are quite interesting to work on. And some of the things that we are working on at Edgeware. So if you're interested, definitely reach out. I hope that wasn't too fast, but thanks so much. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for that talk, Drew. I really enjoyed just how you approach discussing reputation systems. Definitely different than what I expected. So thank you for that, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks. No, thanks so much for having me.
Of
Enjoy the
course.
rest of the
Wait, we have
conference, everyone.
for you.
Oh yeah.
So there's 4 questions for you. If you're okay answering them.
Sure.
So the first one is, I think you were one of the first projects to build on Substrate. Why did you choose Substrate? Question mark. Are you going to be a parachain? Question mark. If so, what does the transition plan look like? So we got 3 questions there.
Yeah.
Please take it away.
Sure. We were one of the first projects to build on Substrate. Why did we build on Substrate? I think we were all pretty interested in the beginning with on-chain governance and an on-chain treasury. And that was something we wanted to deploy and manage and sort of understand how to grow it. So it was like a first easy thing of why we chose Substrate. It was also good to learn Rust. I think it's made me a better developer, even though I'm sure I've pissed off a fair amount of parity engineers. And then, are we going to become a parachain? Yeah, I believe Dylan Chen posted like a parachain economics document on commonwealth.im. So there's definitely a process to go through as far as bonding to be a parachain and getting that initiative funded. So I would say it's in the works. We're still awaiting the whole parachain process to be public, and we'll go from there when that is.
Awesome. Exciting times to see how that will all develop. So our next question is, what are the biggest challenges to on-chain governance and finding key community members to be ambassadors for the network/ecosystem?
Yeah, I think I might answer the second question first. I would say finding key community members is, core to governing these chains well. Ultimately, because I feel people get a little bored quickly. People sometimes drop in to your chain's community for like a 3-month to 4-month stint. They propose a lot of ideas and then they don't really act on it. So I think what is core to finding key community members? I think giving people ownership over things early, at least in your community, and really being sort of like aggressive about keeping the people that find interest in what you're doing, and sort of giving them a reason to stay. What are some other challenges to on-chain governance? I would say, voter participation, managing a council with people who, we're obviously working all remote, and so we want to push governance changes, but sometimes people aren't online, or you don't even know who people really are because they're pseudonymous. There's definitely a lot of challenges.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, those are definitely things that, it takes experience dealing with these different things to actually know about them. So it's good for other people to know that are exploring the on-chain governance kind of side of blockchains. And then we got another one here. Isn't it a circular dependency if the reputation system needs to be governed and we use our reputation to pick those who would govern the system? How do we prevent this from being gamed?
Definitely. I guess even to start, I don't know, I like to think of at least this reputation topic extremely generally. I don't know if the people governing the reputation system would be selected using the reputation, at least in the beginning. But yeah, it is kind of circular. It definitely could lead to bad dynamics. As I said, like if everyone acts strategically, then maybe, people absorb all the reputation in the system by governing it to enhance that dynamic. But I think in the real world, that would be public facing, and that would truly, I think, detract from the success of the system itself. So there's sort of like a balance between, abusing your power in the beginning of a system when you want to grow a community, and not. And I think, at least for me, if I was in charge of governing these reputation systems, I'd be going for the latter. I'd be kind of trying to focus on how do you grow the community and create a breadth of reputation rather than how do I, amass reputation here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just democratizing that reputation and having as many people be a part of it that hopefully make up a larger weight to what could be a single malicious actor.
For sure. I mean, yeah. Well said.
Yeah, I was just responding to what you're the one who said it. Awesome. Well, I mean, I think those are all our questions, or at least all the questions in the Q&A. Thanks again for coming and joining us, Drew. Hopefully we can see you here again next time.
For sure.
And yeah, excited to see how the process goes with, everything from the reputation systems to bridging to obviously a transition to a parachain, which, you are one of the, most widely known parachain or substrate-based chains in the space who will be making that transition. So really exciting stuff coming up, and we're excited to stay tuned for how all those things develop. So thanks again for joining us.
For sure. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye. Awesome. So we're going to be taking about a 5-minute break here, everyone. For those of you who are watching on YouTube or will be watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends. There's a lot of great content that we want to reach as many people as possible. Of course, ChainSafe is hiring, as you've heard many times throughout this event. So if you do and are interested in joining or checking out what those job postings look like, please check out chainsafe.io/careers. Other than that, I think that's all for now, and we'll see you all in about 5 minutes. Thank you.